Well, 2 straight days, and you have had issues where local law enforcement has found themselves in very dangerous situations that began as just traffic stops. Yesterday, maybe you were caught up in the chaos on 35, where if you missed it, 35 was basically shut down near the Gardner Road exit after shots were fired at an officer yesterday afternoon. This was a chase that began down in Franklin County after a traffic stop for speeding led to a driver being removed from the vehicle for questioning about suspicion of drug possession and or use. This is from the Franklin County Sheriff's Office. So then deputies end up returning to the vehicle to question the passenger. The man locked the doors, moves to the driver's seat, and starts speeding away. Deputies pursued the fleeing vehicle northbound on 35. Franklin County Sheriff's Office said the fleeing person fired a gun at pursuing deputies at least twice. Eventually, that person lost control, crashed on I-35 near Moonlight Road in Gardner. They then fled on foot into a wooded area. They were taken into custody after multiple law enforcement agencies utilized drones, canines, and an aircraft to assist with the search. So this caused all this chaos yesterday on 35. If you were driving around down that way, I know it was a total mess. And you probably spent a lot more time in your commute home or to work than you would have otherwise. But this comes one day after KCPD officer was shot. This was on Monday night, just after 10:15. Police officer was shot during a traffic stop near 46th and Benton Boulevard. The driver was pulled over on suspicion of driving under the influence. The officers were in the process of placing the driver into custody when he accessed a gun, fired, and hit one of the officers. The injured officer was rushed to a hospital with what is thought to be and was thought to be at the time non-life-threatening injuries. So yesterday, the update on that story is that the man involved is now facing multiple felony charges after police say he shot an officer. Dwayne Barnes, charged with 2 counts of assault in the first degree, 2 counts of unlawful use of a weapon, 4 counts of armed criminal action, and resisting arrest. Prosecutors requested a $200,000 bond, according to a press release that was put out yesterday. And by the way, for Gene Peters Baker to go all in like that, boy, the evidence must have been overwhelming for her to go all in on somebody who shot a cop. So here you have 2 routine traffic stops, back-to-back days, right here in the Kansas City area, that result in cops getting shot at and one getting hit. Can we put the narrative to rest? Can we stop pretending that the real bad guys over the last 4 years are the police? Can we stop with the lies? Can we stop with the narratives that unarmed people, especially unarmed people of color, should live in fear of police when none of that is true? You know, there is a cop getting shot every 22 hours in this country. You look around the country, 750,000 cops. Thus far in 2024, a cop has been shot once every 22 hours. Now, not killed, but still, you're talking about cops getting shot once every 22 hours. There are men and women on the force right now here in this community, in our region, who are listening. They're starting a shift. They're ending a shift. They're going home to their families, or they're leaving their families. And if they're going home, they're thankful. If they're leaving, they think about something that you and I generally don't think about, which is what's going to happen to me on this job that could potentially result in me, God forbid, losing my life. That's how you have to think in these positions, right? We know about Cody Allen most recently in Independence. I mean, it was a routine eviction notice, and he ends up losing his life and leaving behind a young child. We know about the New York City officer, also routine traffic stop. Hey, guys, get out of that lane. You can't be parked there. He ends up losing his life. So anytime maybe you got pulled over or you're going to get pulled over today, don't get me wrong. We all know that there's the tough guy cop who can be a douche once in a while. Okay, we've all dealt with that before too. They're not all choir boys and choir girls. We get it. We understand that. But remember, for you to sit there or for me to sit there and say, gosh, why is this guy busting me so bad? Just a traffic stop. I was going 12 over the speed limit. Relax. They don't know what they're walking into. They have no idea what they are walking into and what you are all about. You know what you're about, but it's kind of like Monday morning quarterbacking. You, of course, know you. They don't know you. Officer Vasquez in North Kansas City lost his life here in Kansas City a couple of years ago in a routine traffic stop. It's important that we share not only, these stories because they're local news, but understand that some of the most dangerous things can happen during moments in policing that appear routine. And we've got back-to-back examples, 2 straight days here in the Kansas City area of officers getting shot and putting their lives on the line for, by the way, the betterment of our community, keeping our community safe from some of these scumbags and thugs. And you know what? It's time that we realize what they're doing on our behalf. Instead of continuing to poo-poo, downplay, criticize, they're the bad guys, instead of that narrative that persisted for far too long over the last few years and now is costing communities, especially like Kansas City, in the form of lives, in the form of business, in the form of exodus from certain towns, certain cities, certain communities. That stuff is not going away until the narrative is changed. And I genuinely believe that the tide is turning. It's slow, but I do think it's coming around. I think people are starting to wake up. I think many realized they were sold a bill of lies, especially 4 years ago. And it's not that every cop is perfect and never done a single thing wrong. But when you talk about an industry at large, there are very few industries where they wake up and they put their lives on the line and they potentially put their families at risk for the rest of us. And that is one of those industries. And you have seen it on display in impressive fashion twice over the last couple of days with KCPD. And then yesterday, a chase that began in Franklin County and ended up in Gardner and resulted in, cops making what appeared to be a pretty big bust involving, or not big, but some kind of a bust involving drugs. 913-408-7957. Bottom of this hour, we are going to have on Melissa Johnson. She is the Kansas City Director of Public Safety. She's running for Jackson County Prosecutor. And, we're going to talk to her about, obviously, crime in this town, how to go about it differently, what needs to be done. Obviously, we know what happened on the plaza here on Saturday night. That'll be part of our conversation, so do not miss her. She obviously works under Mayor Lucas right now, but we had a brief conversation yesterday. I was pretty impressed coming away with it, so we're looking forward to having her on the show here in 20 minutes on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. And we'll tie it into this story. A prominent business in Westport is shutting down. But are they telling the entire story as to why? We'll get to that next on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Well, if you're going to be walking through Kansas City, specifically Westport, anytime soon, you will realize that Westport Ale House has closed down. Right there, prime time, right off of Broadway. And the owners put up a Facebook post yesterday. Mark sent me a screenshot of this in the afternoon. Now, you seemed, based on your emoji usage, a little upset by this, Mark. Does this place have certain meaning to you, or were you just bummed about a Kansas City business shutting down?
I've only been there once, and it was strange. I saw 2 places closing back-to-back in my feed.
Oh.
I don't know why, but...
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
oh, boy.
Strange.
Well, I've been to Westport Ale House once. It was, I think it was the first summer. Must have been 2018. We were living here, and we were living downtown. And we went down to Westport. We sat on the rooftop there at the ale house. Food was fine, cool vibe. They had the sports bar up top, outdoors, everything else. Beautiful night. But, never went back, so I guess that tells you plenty as well. But it was fine. So they announced on Facebook yesterday they're shutting down. And they write here, like numerous bars and restaurants across the United States, we are closing due to the numerous inflationary increases from food and beverage costs, insurance, and rent, which made operations unsustainable. We would have been forced to raise prices to amounts not feasible for our customers. That doesn't really make sense to me. Because what I mean by that is, wouldn't you at least try? Like, wouldn't you at least raise the prices to where you think you need them to be to determine whether or not they're feasible for your customers? Like, let the customer decide, let the marketplace decide whether or not the prices you have to increase them to are worth it to them to keep going to your restaurant. It would seem to me it's a little premature to just shut down and say, well, no one's going to be able to afford the prices we need to charge. Unless you're talking about like $28 hamburgers, in which case, yeah, okay, fine, just close your doors. But I wonder if there's a little bit more going on here. You may recall that the Westport Ale House was the site of a 2022 shooting that left one person dead and 5 people injured. This was July of 2022. And to take you back to that time, almost 2 years ago, the shooting unfolded, and we know that, listen, the violent crime has been an incredible problem here in parts of Kansas City. And Westport has not been immune to any of it. We've talked to people like Bill Nigro and some of these other folks down there who admit it's a major problem. So the shooting took place July 10th of 22, 11 p.m., after a fight outside of Westport Ale House turned deadly. 6 people were struck by gunfire, including a 24-year-old. His name was Cardell Crawford, father of one, who ended up dying at the hospital. Levant A. Carter of Kansas City was charged with second-degree felony murder for alleged unlawful use that resulted in Crawford being fatally shot. He's also, and was charged at the time, with 2 counts of second-degree assault for allegedly injuring 2 people by recklessly firing a gun. And he got charged with 6 counts of armed criminal action. So once again, in some of these bigger cases, Gene Peters Baker will go after these people. But Westport in general has been dealing with crime and increasing crime for quite some time. We've talked about it. They're forced to have their, dopey wand set up there where they've got checkpoints to get into Westport, on certain nights during the summer. And it's one of the many reasons I'm not bothering to go down there. Now, I know the Westport crowd is not as much my speed, maybe. It's younger people. Although I'm not sitting here as an old guy. I'm sitting here as a millennial saying I ain't going down there. But I know it's maybe meant for more of that post-college single person who wants to go out and really party. And that's fine. Those people need a place to hang out as well. But you're telling me all the issues that Westport has dealt with, especially in recent years and in recent memory, has not played a role in the public saying, I'm not bothering, I'm not going to go down there. I like the Westport Ale House, but it's not that good where I'm going to go down there, and I'm certainly not going to be hanging out late at night. Now, I know, the folks that run Westport Ale House also run other restaurants here in town, so they may want to be playing nice with the Chamber of Commerce folks, and they don't want to, act like crime is a reason that they're shutting down. But I find it hard to believe that it's not part of the reason they're shutting down. I don't deny that inflation has, in a large way, impacted their business. I'm sure it has. But I just think there's more to it than that. And I think that they don't want to really say it because they run other businesses. They don't want to, roll a part of Kansas City under the bus. They don't want to roll the city under the bus. The Chamber of Commerce is certainly not going to open its mouth ever on things like this. So it's kind of like, easy to blame inflation, blame the cost of goods, blame the cost of labor, and close up shop and move on. But I don't believe that's the full story. Now, when you look at some of the other crime issues here in town, there was one thing that I saw here yesterday that was encouraged by. It's something this town should have been doing a long time ago. Police issued dozens of tickets. This is yesterday from KCTV5. Police issued dozens of tickets after officers stopped more than one sideshow in progress on Sunday night. The officers said the dangerous sideshows happened across the city, and the police department shared photos from the bust on their social media pages. They used road spikes and deflated tires of some of the cars involved. I love that. Let's go. Woo! Keep deflating those tires. Put those holes in them, just like me when I'm going out to do a show out of the K 2 weeks ago. The officers said they successfully deployed the road spikes 39 times. Officers arrested 5 people on warrants. They issued 27 traffic tickets, and they arrested one person on suspicion of child endangerment for bringing his 7-year-old child with him to a sideshow on a Sunday night. What is wrong with you? My goodness. But for too long, Kansas City wasn't doing anything about these sideshows. Well, by the time, we found out about them, they were wrapping up. Well, are these really people that we want to be citing? Oh, no one's really getting hurt. No, these are the things that you need to nip in the bud and nip in the bud early to stop any community, any city from going down the drain. And the police, thank goodness, are doing it. And by the way, I like this too. They're bragging about doing it. They're promoting that they're doing it on social media. And that's a good thing. Now, I know there's a lot of people who are parts of this stuff that are not going to see this on social media. But for the rest of us, I'm encouraged by this. And by the way, the tweet from yesterday morning got 60,000 views. 4 city warrant arrests, 3 vehicles towed, 1 felony warrant arrest, 1 child endangerment charge as well. A participant with a 7-year-old attempting to elude officers. That's a real winning father there. And, they're talking about it. They're pushing it and they're pursuing it. And this is what we need more of here in Kansas City to turn this thing around. We know the crime has obviously gone up, of course, led by homicides. But, boy, things need to turn around, and they need to turn around fast. Man, I want to root for this. I do. I want to advocate for what happened yesterday in Michigan, but I can't get myself to do it because I don't trust the judges in this country, and in large part have inherent mistrust for the judicial system. Now, this story, Jennifer and James Crumbly, yesterday, if you didn't see it, the first parents ever convicted in a U.S. mass shooting were sentenced to at least 10 years in prison. A Michigan judge lamented missed opportunities that could have been prevented and could have helped their teenage son from possessing a gun and killing 4 students back in 2021. And, we talked a little bit about this yesterday, and I said, boy, what if just parents in general were held more responsible for the actions of their children? Because we know bad parenting is, it seems like it's in vogue at this point. It's just like, too many people who frankly should not be parents are parents right now. Like just, they didn't use their heads, and then they reproduced and it's like, well, that was a bad idea. It's just amazing. So there's a lot of that out there right now, right? If you're a parent, you see it every day. But at the same time, you have these 2 parents who were charged with involuntary manslaughter, which means they were hit just based on the legal standard. They were charged and ultimately convicted of being involved in the murders of these students. And when you charged Ethan Crumbly as an adult, you then go ahead and you charge the parents as well. As much as I want to think that this is a step in the right direction for crappy parents, I can't help but think this is something that is just going to be abused. And there is a slippery slope conversation that needs to be had that I could not get out of my head. I was torn on this one. I was thinking about it last night when I was putting the show together. I was thinking about it this morning as I was getting ready for the show. And I wanted to come out and I wanted to say, hey, no, this is good. Parents need to pay a price for being negligent, for being dopes, for not looking at what their kids are doing, for just being absentee parents. But then I thought, this is not going to work the way we think it's going to work anyway. It's not. I thought about it through the prism of Kansas City, where when you look back on 2023 and the crime statistics in this town, you had 19 victims under the age of 17 involved with homicides who got shot and killed under the age of 18, so 17 and under. You had 7 suspects under the age of 18. Now, there probably are more because when you go back and you look at the data, 64 people who were involved with the record 182 homicides last year are unknown suspects. So we don't know who they are, their ages, or anything like that. But we do know at least 7 suspects under the age of 18 were involved with homicides last year in Kansas City. And I thought to myself, well, what if you applied that to Kansas City, just like Ethan Crumbley's parents in Michigan? But then I said, who am I kidding? They're never going to start charging parents in Kansas City if their kids are committing heinous acts of violence. That would be political suicide for these people. You and I both know that. You're going to start charging single moms on the east side of Kansas City for their, sons being bozos and criminals? That's not going to happen. You and I both know that. So then what we really would be looking at is suburbia in some cases. And maybe cases like this. And I don't have any sympathy for Crumbley's parents because it does seem like they missed some serious red flags. And they don't seem like the sharpest tools in the shed. And that's me putting it politely. But you're going to look at these parents and ultimately say that you're also criminally, not civilly, but criminally negligent in this, to the point where you are going to spend a decade plus in prison for not pulling the trigger, for not committing the crime, but because it's your kid. I can't get there. As much as I think they were really bad parents, but we also know people whose kids just fly off the handle and you never see it coming. And there's enough of those parents out there too, where I say to myself, are we really going to go down this road? Are we really going to have this slippery slope conversation of when parents could end up being charged for things their kids are doing? And I don't want to inherently look at it through any political lens because I don't think this is, but I certainly could see where this would be abused by politically motivated prosecutors and politically motivated judges. I don't think that's what's going on here. I mean, we heard the judge yesterday. She spoke at the sentencing and said this.
Each of the defendants' gross negligence has caused unimaginable suffering to hundreds of others as a result of what happened that day. Each act or inaction created a ripple effect. Therefore, an out-of-guidelines sentence is appropriate and proportional. The court uses the useful tool of the legislative guidelines, which embody the principles of proportionality, while also taking into account the nature of the offense and the background of each defendant.
That was the judge yesterday at the Crumbley sentencing. They were accused of not securing the newly purchased gun at home, acting indifferently to signs of their son's deteriorating mental health, especially when confronted with a chilling classroom drawing earlier on that same day. Now, there's no doubt, I guess, if you go back to that day that Ethan Crumbley committed this heinous act, he writes this letter seeking help, talking about a school shooting, the whole thing, and the parents said they're not taking him home. Okay, well, if you want to have the conversation about who's responsible here, then what about the school? Now, there's no doubt the school's going to have itself a major civil case on its hands. But why not criminal? If we're saying the parents were negligent, the parents were informed, hey, your son is writing letters, your son is basically reaching out for help and things he's doing at school, and the parents say they're not taking him home, well, guess what? The school left him in that building. Can't you make the case then that the school put these kids at risk by leaving him in the building? Even if the parents are not going to take him out of that school building the day of that shooting, the school can say and should say in hindsight, well, he can't stay here We've got hundreds of innocent children that we are not going to put at risk right now based on some of the red flags and warning signs that we're seeing here. You can make the case if the parents are criminally liable, then the school is criminally liable. And that's not a road that I think we should be going down. People have got to be more responsible, but man, I see this thing spiraling way out of control. 913-408-7957 is how you join us on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Let's go to the phones. Glenn's first up. What's up, Glenn? Good morning.
Good morning, Pete. With all due respect, I disagree with you. In other crimes, the parents would be viewed as an accomplice. It's my belief and my understanding that they bought the gun for him. There was a severe failure to notice the behavior. I think it's dereliction of duty. They were an accomplice to this crime. So, yes, they should go to prison because they bought the gun. I also think, too, that, we need to have a discussion. I think you're right that, we need to discuss whether the school is criminally liable. If they're just basically collecting money and the NEA is controlling access to our children and they know better than parents, then maybe this is a discussion that we need to have.
Well, I'll give you that, Glenn. I totally agree. If they think that they are best suited for the job, and I would wildly disagree with that, obviously, then where is their responsibility in this? As for the gun, listen, I understand that angle. But as we know, on that day, the parents, and obviously nobody did, know that Ethan Crumbley had this handgun in a backpack when he was dropped off at Oxford High School. If they had known that he had that gun when he was dropped off at school, different conversation. That's a very different conversation. Well, now you're asking all these legal questions. I'm not a lawyer here. I'm just speaking as a common sense guy. And I want to support the ruling of the judge yesterday and the sentencing yesterday that sent the Crumbley parents to prison for over 10 years after their son killed 4 people at Oxford High School in Michigan back in 2021. I do, because, gosh, we see awful parenting at every turn in this country. I mean, people have no business procreating, and it's one of the biggest problems we've got. But I just can't get myself to the point where I would feel comfortable with a legal system that says you didn't pull a trigger, you didn't do anything necessarily that led to the direct death of somebody else, but we are going to charge you criminally. Example, Pete, if a 14-year-old takes the car keys and drives the car to cause a major accident, are the parents criminally liable? I'm sure that someone's got legal examples of when or where something like that may have happened. And, if the parents leave the keys somewhere and they're readily accessible and the kid drives off, once again, it's a gray area. But I can't get myself to cheer this on, as much as I think bad parenting is the biggest problem we've got in this country. Andy is on KCMO. He is from the Michigan area. Andy, what do you got for us? Good morning.
Good morning, sir. When it comes to the school, I was born and raised in Michigan through the 80s. When we had problems in the school, our parents got called, and if it was really bad, they would call law enforcement for a further follow-up or, say, an investigation of sort.
Yeah.
So why didn't Oxford High School at that time see the warning flags, have the parents there? Why did they not call the authorities right then?
Well, yeah, so for people that don't know, you obviously know the case well. The morning of the shooting, Ethan Crumbley sketched images of a gun,
Yes.
a bullet, a wounded man on a math paper, and he wrote, "The thoughts won't stop, help me, blood everywhere, my life is useless." They call his parents in for 15 minutes, and basically they say, "We're not taking him home." And the school lets him stay. They did not demand the team go home. And that's where, if you're going to say the parents are responsible, I'm going to sit here and say the school has to also be responsible because they're the ones who kept the kid in the classroom.
Oh, absolutely. All parties should be involved. Not only the parents being 10 years plus, I mean, at the very minimum, I would have thought the sentencing would have been longer than the oldest child that was lost. Now, I think that would have been fair. Then I also think that all the schooling, the counselors, Oxford High School community should reach out and address the counselors that were there with them that 15 minutes. They had a responsibility to that community, to those children in that school.
Yeah.
And they dropped the ball.
Andy, thank you.
Criminal? Absolutely.
Good call, Andy. Thanks, buddy. You too. I'm going to add to that and say, here's what I think the overriding theme is here on this in part. We're so damn soft. And what I mean by that is we are afraid to say, hey, this kid's got serious issues. He cannot be around other students right now. Instead, we take this soft approach of, well, you know, he's just having a rough day. He's a good kid deep down. We'll work with him over time, and we'll make sure that he's feeling okay. Yes, feelings are important. I'm not an anti-feelings guy, okay? Not an anti-therapy, anti-feelings guy. But, man, you got that kind of a red flag. You have a duty as a school to the other kids there to say this kid can't be around us. Jamie's in Stillwell. Hi, Jamie. Good morning. You're on KCMO.
Hi. I just want to bring in another element to this. I had a child that had some anxiety issues and things over COVID and needed help. Took him, only thing I could do was take him to the emergency room, and I took him to the Shawnee Mission because they were known for their mental health. 8 hours of waiting in there to talk to someone. A counselor came in, apologized, said, I really can't do anything. I can't give you any medication or any help, but I can give you a referral. And that was $1,000. And then after that, it took 3 weeks for him to get in to get seen. Our system to help these kids sucks.
You are so right. Jamie, that
and
is...
If we're not going to approach that, then this is just a waste of time.
Jamie, you nailed the broader, bigger picture here. Thank you. I know that there are thousands of parents who are shaking their heads along with you on the radio right now.
All right. Well, thank you for letting me say it.
No, you're right. The system is broken. Kids' mental health have been destroyed in the wake of COVID. There are more issues than ever before. I think it's COVID mixed with social media, mixed with modern-day anxieties, and there are not enough people to help right now. That is absolutely, undoubtedly true. And as someone who is far too familiar with mental health issues, not for me personally, but people close to me, I get it. You are so right. And if you don't have the resources, you are going to wait and wait and wait. And it is the biggest issue facing young people in this country right now that is not being addressed. And that's the broader picture that needs to be had and conversation that needs to be had, and we can have it here on KCMO. Dow futures are tanking. A minute ago, Dow futures were off 300 points. Now they're off 350 points after the inflation report comes out. We'll get to your calls here in a second, but I want to update you on this. They just dropped 5 minutes ago. March CPI inflation rises to 3.5%, above the expectations of 3.4%. Core CPI, 3.8%, above the expectations of 3.7%. This is now the 36th consecutive month with inflation above 3%, second straight monthly increase. Wow. Inflation may very well be rearing its ugly head once again. What does that mean? We'll get to it coming up here on KCMO. It's been a busy morning. We are talking with you about this Michigan couple, the Crumleys, who were sentenced yesterday to 10-plus years in prison after what happened with their son, Ethan, who shot up a school in Michigan back in 2021. Are they and should they have been held criminally liable? Many of you are cheering this on, and you're talking about, dereliction of duty as parents, and I get it, but, man, opening up a can of worms when you had the kid charged as an adult and then charging the adults, obviously, as adults and holding them criminally liable. There are so many different issues that can open up and bring into the equation that I don't want any part of. And there's angles that I'm not even thinking about right now. Are we going to have spouses now potentially being charged for things that their significant others do? I mean, how far does this potentially go? If your spouse does something awful at the workplace and maybe you saw some red flags and some signs, how responsible could you be in a scenario like that? I want no part of it. I don't. And maybe that's just inherently not wanting to trust the judicial system and the legal system here. And being pessimistic. I don't want to be. I want to be pure about it and say these parents were idiots. They were clueless. Their kids had all these issues, and they were not paying attention. But I can't get myself there, man. I can't do it. Jeff's in Kansas City. Jeff, what's up?
Good morning. You point out a lot of really good things. You've got just a broad spectrum of things that you can argue about this. But you know what? Back in the good old days, if your kid was a problem child and he stole somebody's car, you were financially responsible. Guess what? Put it back on the parents.
Well, that's I'm okay with a civil situation here potentially, but we're talking criminal charges.
I've been involved in the criminal justice system for a really long time, but and I agree with you. It's a slippery slope, and the thing that I like about it is the fact that this is going to make people think across the country, oh, my God, if my kid does this because I know he's got a problem, then is there any out for me as far as I've tried to tell the police? I've called the police. I've tried to get him into juvenile help. I've tried to do this. I've tried to do that. Have those people tried that? It sounds like those people are kind of washing their hands of it. Now, does it kind of tell you that maybe the school administrators are weak-kneed sisters? And the answer is yes.
Yes.
These school administrators over the last 35, 40 years have just gotten watered down and watered down and watered down to the point where when you were probably in high school, I know when I was, there was a superintendent, like 2 or 3 deputy superintendents for instruction. Now you have as many deputy superintendents as you got principals.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
You have all these watered down things that we have to do.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of instructing kids and doing the basics, they're doing everything but.
Yeah.
And so the schools, yes, they're at fault. I agree. But at the same time, if you put this back, the impetus back on the parents and go, hey, you may go to prison, buddy, it's going to make them think.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing. You're under the assumption, Jeff, that parents are going to know that, like, the worst of the worst parents, the people that should not be parents, they probably don't even know about this story because their head's so buried in the sand.
They don't care.
Yeah, they don't care.
When you talk about the criminal justice system, and I'll cut this off after this, but if you, let's just say criminal justice-wise, if you go to Cass County, Jackson County, Clay County, and Platte County, just on the Missouri side, you have probably 3 different forms of justice there. You've got Jackson County where the gates are wide open.
Jeff, I don't want to get too far in the weeds on the local. I understand your point, though.
But what I'm saying, but I agree with you on you'd never know where the courts are going to take this because you have such a broad range of enforcement.
Yes. Yeah, that is exactly right. So much of it is based on your judges and your prosecutors, and that's a problem in and of itself that we're trying to figure out here in Kansas City. Eli is on KCMO in Kansas City. What's up, Eli?
Hey, Pete, I just have 2 quick comments. Number one, Kansas City metro area participates in the 988 crisis intervention hotline. And so if parents or schools or friends, family, whoever are faced with a situation like this, instead of calling 911, call 988. And organizations like the one I work for will show up with a crisis intervention team to help de-escalate a situation and get people help in a better fashion than just, the sheriff showing up or law enforcement showing up. So 988, really useful tool. We participate in it here in Kansas City, and I hope people will use it more.
Mm-hmm.
The second point, we're talking about the crisis of mental and behavioral health that we're seeing, the growing problem. The budget committee in the House on the Missouri side, unanimously, Republicans and Democrats passed a budget that included robust mental and behavioral health funding for the state of Missouri. Republican leadership stripped that out of the budget, and the budget committee members are trying to figure out how to get that back into the Missouri budget. So if you have any legislators on, I'd be really curious why Republican leadership in the House decided to strip out mental health funding at a time when it seems to be most critical.
Thank you, Eli. I will do a little digging on that, man. I don't know the answer. I don't know the details behind that, but certainly if what you're saying is accurate, now's probably not the time to be stripping that out. I could find a lot of fat in the budget that I would strip before I'd start talking about and taking out, mental health for kids. Not that, the government's going to do it best, but I think that's a problem. Jason in Topeka. Hey, Jason, good morning.
Hey, good morning. So I think my biggest concern is how far this can go, how far-reaching the decision can go. If my kid gets into, I don't drink, but if my kid gets into my liquor cabinet and does something stupid, accident, DUI, and kills somebody, am I going to be held responsible?
I think there are I think there's plenty of examples where civilly you could find yourself in some civil problem there, where your kid breaks into your liquor and starts drinking and driving, something, God forbid, happens. I think there are certainly cases where that has put the parents in at least a civil bind, which, is more understandable than a criminal bind.
Right. And then another thing, there's people that have committed murders that don't get sentenced to 10 to 15 years in prison, that have actually physically done it and not stop somebody from doing it.
Well, thank you, Jason. That really gets back to something Jeff was talking about a couple callers ago, which is the way the criminal justice system and the prosecutors and the judges are so different and willy-nilly based on the jurisdiction that they're in, which is problematic. Alfonso in Blue Springs next up. Hey, Alfonso, good morning.
I also agree that this shouldn't be criminally charged. I went to a high school in Colorado where we had open campus, and I skipped class. They were going to charge my mom criminally for me skipping class, and she was up in arms. She worked 2 jobs and couldn't really control what I did, so I think it was kind of the same premise. I think the kids should be a charged adult, but the parents shouldn't be charged. That's wrong, because once you go down that slippery slope, you never know how the system is going to treat it.
Well, that's a lot of people are saying that on the text line, Alfonso. It's a good point. If the kid has been charged as an adult, then how do you go out there and say, well, also you're going to charge the parents criminally in that case? All excellent points. 7:45 on a busy Wednesday morning on KCMO. Dow futures are plummeting. I just flipped over to CNBC, and just market in general. Dow is now implied open is off 460 points. I started the segment, it was off 300 points. At 7:30, it was off 250. So things are rapidly declining for the markets today ahead of the 8:30 open, and it's because of this red-hot inflation report